Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. I'm back after having been temporarily banned. For some reason, they thought one of my abortion videos was spreading COVID misinformation. I challenged it. I noted that I didn't even mention COVID in the video, and they're like, oh, and they put it back. So now I am looking at a news story from Austin, Texas. The title on my local station is Judge to Decide Texas Abortion Ban Case After 2 Days of Emotional Testimony. Now, I am going to guess that the emotional testimony was just how horrible it is for women that they can't go get their wombs suctioned out. A judge in Texas is expected to take a few weeks to make a decision in Zorowski versus State of Texas, a lawsuit that argues the vagueness in the way the medical exceptions to Texas abortion bans are written. On Thursday, which was day 2 of testimony, lawyers for the Texas Attorney General's office pressed an out-of-state maternal fetal medicine specialist with whom he had spoken about the Texas abortion bans. This is really poorly written. On Tuesday, day 2 of the testimony, lawyers for the Texas Attorney General's office pressed an out-of-state maternal fetal medicine specialist about with whom he had spoken about the bans. Who were the names of the Texas doctors you spoke with? Dr. Aaron Cahy replied, I won't answer that. Let's see who this guy is, shall we? Yeah, this is probably him. Ohio State University, professor of obstetrics and gynecology, OBGYN perinatology, special focus perinatology, clinician, blah, blah, blah. Special interest in diabetes and pregnancy, focus on a broad array of methodologies, including standardized statistical techniques, as well as decision and cost effectiveness analysis to answer questions in obstetrics and maternal fetal medicine regarding post-term pregnancy, preeclampsia and diabetes in pregnancy, obesity and weight gain, as well as prenatal diagnoses. So that's who that guy is, and I'll provide a link to that below. At issue are the medical exemptions to the 2 bans on abortions in Texas. The trigger ban, which bans almost all abortions, and Senate Bill 8, which bans abortions beginning at 6 weeks. Now, the last time I looked at a 6-week abortion ban, it wasn't 6 weeks. It was when the heart could be detected on ultrasound, which is typically at 6 weeks. The lawsuit asked for a temporary injunction protecting doctors who are treating obstetrical problems. And we've said this before, you can treat obstetrical problems without deliberately killing the baby, and that can include delivering the baby early, even if the baby is too young to survive. That was the case with Rick Santorum's child, Gabriel. Mrs. Santorum developed an infection. There was a danger that the infection would kill her, so they delivered the baby. They did not reach in with forceps and take the baby apart in pieces, and, put them on a tray in bloody chunks and risk poking holes in her uterus and taking that uterine infection and getting it all through her bloodstream, which an abortion would have done. They just induced labor and ended the pregnancy. My friend had to have 3 pregnancies terminated because of immediate threat to her life. They were terminated via emergency C-sections, which gets the baby out of the womb and in the NICU within the hour. Doesn't make any sense why you would take a woman who has life-threatening health problems and have her spend 3 days in a motel while she goes back and forth to this abortion clinic, taking extra steps to make sure you get a dead baby instead of a live one. Okay. At lunch recess, a Dallas obstetrician gynecologist took the stand, not as an expert, but as a woman who had not been able to get an abortion in Texas last year. Dr. Austin Denard is 34 weeks pregnant, but said the pregnancy she ended in 2022 was very different. She was nervous early on about the pregnancy after a spontaneous miscarriage. These fears came true after an 11-week ultrasound. At another appointment, the doctor said, Austin, it is anencephaly. Now, wait a minute. She wasn't able to get an abortion, but she had a spontaneous miscarriage? Oh, so it seems like she had a miscarriage. So she was pregnant again after the miscarriage. So she was having an 11-week ultrasound because she had, this is one of the most poorly written articles I've ever read. It is so confusing. Anencephaly is a fatal abnormality in which the fetus is missing parts of the brain and skull and is incompatible with life, with most babies dying in utero or within hours of birth. And actually, they're finding that this is not necessarily the case. Yes, many of them die in utero. Many of them die within hours of birth, but it's turning out that the main reason they die is that everybody assumes they're just going to die and doesn't take care of them. If you don't provide the baby with any care, the baby is going to die. Okay? So Denner testified it can lead to infection, abruption, sepsis, and other complications for the woman. Okay, so you deal with those when they come. You get an infection, you induce labor. An abruption, that is placental abruption. I think that's when, let me Google that. I think that is when the placental abruption. I want to make sure. I think that's when it starts to come off early. Placental abruption. Yeah, when this placenta starts to separate from the uterine wall prematurely. Sepsis, that's infection. That's an infection and other complications. Her lawyer asked, at your 11-week appointment, do you feel you qualified for an abortion under the Texas emergency medical exemption? I realized I was not critically ill, Denard answered, and I did not believe I qualified for an abortion in my state. So, I mean, why are they asking her this question? The person who should answer that is the doctor. And again, why would you need an abortion? If the doctor believes that it's necessary to end this pregnancy because your life is at risk, induce labor. Yeah, you might be inducing labor very preterm. Lawyers for the state of Texas are trying to show that the problem lies not with Texas law, but the way Texas doctors are interpreting it, asking Denard if the state had intervened. And this is something somebody else has mentioned. Somebody else brought it up. I hadn't noticed it. I had thought when Roe went down, the big thing that the abortion lobby was going to go for was trying to get a woman killed in a criminal abortion and say, look, she wasn't able to access a safe legal abortion, therefore she ended up dead. Like they were going to create another Rosie Jimenez, and I'll provide a link to that below. But it actually looks like what they're trying to do is get a situation where they're trying to create a Savita situation like they had in Ireland, where that woman had a life-threatening infection, and because she did not have a doctor who, the doctor just said, sorry, can't do an abortion, the fetus's heart is still beating. There was no reason he could not have induced labor. Zero reason he could not have induced labor. The Evangelium Vitae, the official Catholic Church stand on abortion. Okay, so supposedly he told her, this is a Catholic country, we can't do anything while the baby has a heartbeat. The Evangelium Vitae, which I will link to below, says you are allowed to do things that preserve the woman's life even if the death of the baby is a sad, unintended additional effect. This doctor didn't even administer antibiotics. He could have put her on IV antibiotics the minute he got her under his care. The minute he diagnosed an infection, he could have put her on antibiotics. But instead, he just told her, sorry, no abortion, and let her die. And I fear. I'm not saying they're doing this. YouTube, I am not saying they're doing this. I am saying that there is cause to be concerned that somebody might do the same thing. So, did Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton ever tell you you couldn't have an abortion? I didn't ask him, Denard replied to a smattering of laughter from the courtroom. The state called in expert witness Dr. Ingrid Skop, an obstetrician gynecologist who practices in Texas, and said on occasion a patient's life is in danger and an abortion was indicated. The Texas law says a doctor can use reasonable medical judgment, Skop said on the stand, but she said the issue lies not with the law but with hospital systems and the decisions they have made. The law is quite clear and physicians are not given guidance by the hospitals. Texas Department of State Health Services released preliminary information, says there's been an 11.5% increase in infant deaths since the ban went into effect, and that death caused by birth defects rose by more than 21%. That is just, I have no idea what the hell that's about. I mean, are they, first of all, if you're not killing them in the womb and they're dying later, that's not an increase in deaths. If you would have killed that baby anyway and it died later, that baby lived longer. I'm going to have to do a whole complete thing about this, but they're trying to say, oh, this abortion ban is making babies die. How can killing fewer babies cause more babies to die? And death caused by birth defects rose by more than 21%. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. So there's going to be a separate video about that. But this is my reaction to that Texas law where if they just followed the Evangelum Vitae, they would have no trouble. Her doctor could have monitored her, said, okay, it looks like the placenta is starting to separate. We need to deliver right now. Or, you know, okay, we did the ultrasound. The baby's heart has stopped, but you haven't started to miscarry. There's all kinds of things you can do. Reaching in and pulling the baby apart with forceps is not necessary. You can end the pregnancy without taking a live baby apart with big old forceps. It's possible. And it's just sickening to me that people are using situations like this woman's situation to say we should always be allowed to reach in and pull limbs off babies because, what? Somebody would want to rip this baby limb from limb instead of just inducing labor if she got an infection? Abortion advocates are weird.